Okay. So hello everyone, and welcome to the Open AGI Forum. I'm Eric Wong from CSDN. Today here's the CodeGeeX AI Paris 2025. We're honored to have Diego Rojas, a research engineer at Zhipu AI, with us to share his journey with code LLM. So welcome, Diego. And before we dive in, let me remind our audience to follow the CodeGeeX Foundation on X and YouTube for the latest updates on open source AI and future events. So please take a brief introduction.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for having me. So my name is Diego. I work as a research engineer for Zhipu AI. So you may know Zhipu AI from Hugging Face. We released quite a few models ever since 2021, such as ChatGLM. Recently, we released Z1, which is our reasoning model. And so I work in the code team on a model called CodeGeeX, and I'm currently doing some research in how to drive down the latency of current models.
Yeah. So Diego, we know you have learned a bit of Chinese. So could you have a little start by introducing yourself briefly to our audience in Chinese?
Okay, I will sure try. So, 大家好，我叫罗杰瑟，我是清华大学的留学生，and that's about it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you use your family name for the Chinese name.
Yeah, that's right. That's my teacher who gave it to me.
Oh,
actually. So
that's cool.
Quite nice.
So could you share a bit about your personal journey, like what initially sparked your interest in AI and led you from your undergraduate studies in France to pursuing your master's at Tsinghua University at Beijing?
Sure. So I actually started doing computer programming, essentially, and I transitioned to AI when I started my master's in China. So before I hadn't really touched on the whole AI thing, and it was quite good timing because the day that I joined my laboratory in Tsinghua, which is the knowledge engineering group, working on large pre-trained models, was around the time that ChatGPT was released. And so very quickly, I became interested in coding models. I thought the task was super interesting, and I thought it was, in nature, very different to natural language, and the way it was treated at the time in the LLM training pipelines was about the same, so I thought there were some interesting opportunities there.
I see. So you did your undergraduate studies at France and later purpose further studies at Tsinghua. So what significant difference have you noticed between the two educational environments in computer science and AI? So how has this cross-cultural academic background shaped your perspective?
Sure. So actually, my case is a little specific. I joined AP Tech, the school in France, which has a different teaching a way of teaching than most schools and you would find in France. So there were no exams, you would only do projects, and there were no professors. So it's a very unique way of teaching, which I really enjoyed. But I think what I was lacking the most in this way of studying is like the theoretical aspect, the more research aspect. So I learned a great deal about programming and software engineering. I did an internship in cloud computing. But when I moved to China, I definitely was able to pick up a few things related to theory and get more involved in machine learning, deep learning, and some math that I hadn't picked up in a long time. And yeah, I completely enjoyed the way. So the way things go at Tsinghua is it's really geared towards research. So you're really motivated to join a lab early on, and the classes are one part of the teaching there, and then you're supposed to work with your lab, which I really enjoyed this group effort with my classmates. So it's great.
So being here in Paris, I mean, back to Paris for the CodeGeeX must be interesting. So how does this feel to be present back in France? And what's your first impressions of the CodeGeeX conference, especially its focus on open source AI?
So yeah, I actually moved back to France about 6 months ago. I spent 2 years in Beijing. I miss it already a lot, so definitely planning on going back. So Paris is actually a very cool place in Europe. I think it's very unique in the way that there's a lot of events, a lot of interesting companies going on. I think it's at the heart of European AI for sure. And yeah, I'm super happy to be at GoSim. It's wonderful to meet the people there, and I'm super excited for the talks that are coming later today.
Yeah. So many viewers know now you are studying under Professor Tang
Yeah,
Jie,
yeah.
at Tsinghua University, and now work on the CodeGeeX team at Zhipu AI. So could you tell us about your experience or your story, both with in Professor Tang's group at Tsinghua and as part of the CodeGeeX team at Zhipu?
Yeah. So I actually met Professor Tong when I was applying to the KEG lab, and I think I owe a lot to him because at the time I really had no experience doing AI. I mostly had experience doing engineering, and he was super eager to take me on, and that was, I think, a very kind thing to do for him. And so I actually did my thesis under him.
When was that?
That was in 2022.
2022,
Yeah, 2022 at the start of my master's. And then I started working with Zhipu AI, again thanks to Professor Tong, and I started working with the CodeGeeX team. So the CodeGeeX team is led by a student under Professor Tong pursuing a doctorate called Qingkai Zheng. He's the one who wrote the paper on CodeGeeX, I think, back in 2022. And Qingkai has been my complete mentor throughout this whole time, completely helping me get up to speed with the whole coding, AI for coding space. So again, I'm extremely grateful, and I think my time there was very intense. So like a lot of work, a lot of interesting work, but also a lot of like companionship, which was really precious.
Yeah, our audience maybe don't know. Qingkai Zhang can speak French to Diego. Yeah,
That's the most impressive thing about
Is he the
it.
only one, only Chinese you first met can speak fluency French?
You know, one of the most surprising things coming to China, I met a few Chinese people who were able to speak French, mostly at the company Zhipu.
Oh,
And so Qingkai spent 3 years in France, speaks perfect French, absolute perfect French. And I met another student who spent a year in France. He reads French literature that I haven't even read, and he visited more cities in France in the very short year that he was in Europe than I did. So I think it's truly incredible the openness of Chinese people to come visit abroad and really embrace the culture, which is really cool.
yeah. So Diego, his the contribution to key Zhipu AI projects like CodeGeeX2 and involvement with the foundational GLM49B model. So could you elaborate your specific role and contributions within the Code LLMs team?
Sure.
And the contribution within the significant projects?
So I think my contribution is divided into two parts. So the first thing I shipped when I arrived at Zhipu was the code interpreter model. So I basically helped build the data set to be able to teach our coding model at the time, which had like chat capabilities, into a model that was able to execute code and then react to the output, correct itself, and be involved in more complex engineering tasks. So this contribution was both on the data side, and so the fine-tuning of a base model, and also on the architecture behind it, because we're running a lot of containers that are running the actual code the model is writing, and this has to be extremely safe because the model can write faulty code, the user can inject some code, so there was a lot of large-scale infrastructure there. And the second thing that I did later on, I think at the end of my stay at Zhipu, is during the CodeGeeX 4 post-training, we had a need to do some data filtering. So, you know, like code, there are like a lot of codes from the internet, but none of it is all high quality. So we have a lot of work in filtering, creating models that can detect samples that we do not want to train on during those final post-training stages.
I see. So you talk about the data set. So what are some of unique challenges when working on the multilingual code models like CodeGeeX? Because we all coding in English. So if it's multilingual, many language, what is the unique challenges?
So I think there's quite a lot of good generalization coming from multilingual code training. I think the issues are about the same as we see in natural language pre-training. So there's a lot of languages for which there's very little resource. And even languages that are quite popular, like Rust, the models struggle immensely on it. So even if you ask like the leading Zhipu or Open AI models Rust questions, they often struggle because there's this lack of open documentation. And I think essentially it just maps back to the same thing. So the internet is this distribution of like articles, code samples, and if you have like newer languages, the models struggle. So I think that's primarily the main setback we're experiencing when training multilingual code models.
Yeah. You also develop a personal project, Go Pilot. So what inspired you to focus on Go, this language, and what were the key takeaways from building an LLM under such constraints?
Yeah, so actually GoPilot is a project very close to my heart. So it was a project that I did during my first year, and it was at the time when I was trying to like catch up on how to train and work with large language models. And so I had an idea just to like train my own coding model. There were a few coding models at the time, and I decided that I would do this on a like very small budget, so less than $100. And I had this idea that if you use a different tokenizer, so if you don't train the model on the tokens that we see from the BP tokenizers, the ones that Open AI, that Anthropic's use, but if you train the model directly on the concrete syntax tree, so like the actual tokens that you see in Go language, like for, return, names of variables, etc., it would improve performance. So that's the idea, and it ended up being like one of my final projects, I think, for my deep learning class or something. Yeah, it was absolutely fun. It took me an immense amount of time because I did everything from scratch, but then I think it's the best project you can do if you're trying to get into LLMs. It's not it's not at all out of reach to train a small model on your own. I think it cost about $100 or something like that.
From scratch?
Yeah, so we trained on, actually, once again, Shinkai lended me 24090s from his home office. So, and we used one for the baseline, one for the other model, and we were able to train like a 300 million parameter model and use it as a code completion model. It was running on my Mac. And so if you pick a very simple task, such as Golang, which has simple syntax, you can train something and get a feel on how it's like training better models, which is really different, but the idea is the same.
Yeah, so how does this hand-on experience, even at a smaller scale, inform you work on a much larger scale, much larger systems at Zhipu AI?
So actually, I was not involved in some of the larger training runs that we did. So Zhipu has quite a few quite large models, and we've been working on large models for a long time. So in I don't forget if it's 2021 or 2022, but we released GLM 130B. And so obviously the dynamics of training, the fault tolerance, etc., are like very hard aspects to master, and the multiple levels of pipeline, like of parallelism. Me, luckily, I don't get exposed to this as much because I do a lot of small scale experiments. So I try out new architecture or small training objective changes, and I usually do this at a scale where it fits in a single GPU, so I can use simpler methods for training, and we're just verifying experiments, so not so much distributed training.
Yes. So Diego is going to take a GoSim talk later. So his talk explores the cutting-edge ideas like diffusion models. He just mentioned the tokenizers, free architectures for code. So let's break that down. So first, could you explain the basic process by which diffusion language models generate text or code? So how does it differ fundamentally from conventional autoregressive models like the transformer?
Yeah, so the basic LLM formulation is generating the next token based on the previous tokens, and you're doing this one token at a time. And the diffusion applied to language modeling is not necessarily new, but it's getting a lot of traction recently. And the idea is that you basically decode multiple tokens in parallel, and you do this over multiple steps the way you would with image generation. And obviously, you can't really apply the same logic that you apply to image. So in image diffusion, you apply this Gaussian noise or like this perturbation to the image, and then you teach the model to denoise it more over and over. So obviously, you can't really apply this type of noise to token sequences. But then you can use other techniques. So masking a subset of the tokens in the sequence is pretty common. There are also works that are trying to do continuous diffusion. So they first embed the sequence and they apply this Gaussian noise to the embeddings of the word, so in latent space. And so, yeah, the ideas stay pretty much the same, but instead of just predicting the next word, you're taking this really big sequence and then progressively unmasking or denoising your sequence to arrive to the final results.
Yeah. Have you watched the GPT-4o news this year? The Twitter just suddenly have full of the Ghibli
Yeah,
images.
yeah, absolutely.
That's,
Yeah.
that's funny. Is the image model is using the autoregressive, and the code model is
Yeah.
using this diffusion.
Yeah,
It's opposite.
that's a very good observation. I think it's very interesting that the two fields are all of a sudden exchanging ideas like this. I think the main thing that I want to maybe put forth with my talk is that there's no silver bullet in model
I see.
architecture.
Yeah.
So the idea is not that you apply diffusion to language, it's all of a sudden going to be so much better. It's always a trade-off. And the idea to apply this to code is you have so many interesting tasks in code. So I think we see LLMs and we think like chatbot, autoregressive chatbot. And actually at CodeGeeX, we have like a lot of features, so code completion, or sometimes you want to rewrite like a whole file to apply a few changes. So a lot of high throughput, a lot of low latency tasks where you don't want to spend thousands of dollars with a very expensive model. You want to have a very fast model, and the task is very different. So good applications for that in code.
I see. So looking to tokenizer-free architecture, so what is the core idea behind them, and what's potential advantage to the promise over traditional subword tokenizers methods like BPE?
Yeah.
So for modeling modern code.
So I think one of the most surprising thing that I found when I was working on code language models for the first time, I was so surprised to see that they used the same pipeline as in natural language, tokenizing the code. It was back at the time where GPT 3.5, had this tokenizer which would tokenize every single space as its own token. So for a code file, you would have like 5 to 8 times more tokens than you would have for a typical natural language file. So this is where the idea for working on tokenization for code came from. And I actually wrote my thesis, master thesis on this topic. But I think my approach during my thesis wasn't necessarily very promising. I think I took not the best direction. I was working on a more effective tokenizer, so one that could produce larger and larger tokens that still made sense semantically speaking or syntactically speaking. And I think about the same time there was this new research direction of trying to get rid of the tokenizer altogether. And so now I think that the best tokenizer is no tokenizer at all. So the reason why is because tokenization introduces so many bias in the way it models language. I think we are all familiar with the fact that even to this day, I checked this morning on my phone, Open AI's models or any model cannot even tell you how many R's are in strawberry.
Oh, yeah.
I think they fixed the strawberry example, but I tried with cheeses and it couldn't work. So I think, it's also a way to reduce the latency, because I think essentially, and you see this in so many ways. So you have the multi-token prediction by Meta. You have the DeepSeek NSA, so the attention, hierarchical attention. And I think so many works are trying to get to a point where the granularity of information passing in transformers is not tokens that are produced by a deterministic tokenization process that's decoupled from the model, but something that's end-to-end, so taking raw bytes, constructing hidden representations from that, and then hopefully it leads to better performance.
I see. So how do you view the current state of code LLM overall? So where does the work you discuss, like diffusion, tokenizer-free, and Zhipu AI's efforts fit into the broader landscape of advancing code intelligence?
So I think code has taken a very big place in state-of-the-art model training. I think most papers now disclose that they train on 30%, sometimes even 40% or half of code data for their pre-training, even if their model is targeted at a general purpose abilities. And so I think, code is very present in LM training. I think the model and the tasks are very different for code. So I'm excited to see maybe new training objectives or new architectures or pipelines that are optimized for code. But you see a lot of papers that use code, like in reasoning, for example, as a verifiable way of training reasoning models. So I think there's a lot of exciting things happening in code. And with regards to Zhipu, I think the CodeGeeX model series, so we always base CodeGeeX on GLM4, and the pre-training team at Zhipu is really amazing. The models that they put out just are really impressive every time. And then we do another round of fine-tuning where we really push the boundaries. And I think when we released CodeGeeX 4 back in July, I think, yeah, July of last year, it was SOTA for the less than 10 billion parameters, and the next iteration will be as well, I think.
Yeah, I see. So we have talked about the tokenizer, and there's another enemy is the context window.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for large existing code projects, so current LLMs often struggle with limited context windows.
Yeah.
So how can we help a model better understand the project's overall architecture, dependencies, and specific details beyond what fits in the context?
That's a very good question. So I think there's so many directions in which to go. So there are definitely companies trying to scale context up to infinity. I think Meta tried that with the latest Llama 4 release.
Yeah.
There are people who are advocating for RAG heavily. And I think it's definitely something we're working on, and that's unsolved, because when you want to make like accurate predictions during even like low latency tasks such as code completion, or very complex tasks such as an agent reasoning for a very long time, you have to grab so much context. You have to grab the whole code base if you can, and the documentation for all the libraries the person's working with. So I think the hierarchical formulation of not working directly over like millions and millions of tokens, but maybe working in latent space more, so having maybe embeddings for the code base, having maybe embeddings for certain documentation or libraries could be helpful, but I haven't really tried that out recently, but it's definitely on our list to look into that.
So AI coding seems to be gradually shifting from a purely chat-based interaction to a more autonomous agent-based paradigm. So based on current model capabilities, where do you see the boundaries of AI coding today? What do you envision as the future direction for AI coding agents?
So I think it's actually quite interesting. I talk to a lot of people that are software engineers, and a lot of them still don't use AI for their projects, simply because I feel like the way the current agents are implemented don't really match what some developers expect. So maybe developers are really happy to give a task to an agent, and they're okay with the agent failing, and they're okay to like code and by prompting the agent. But I think there's definitely too much of a focus on agent right now, and not enough of a focus on augmenting the developer. So I think the framing of having this agent workflow implemented kind of replaces the developer. You don't really interact with the AI. It just goes on for a very long time, makes mistakes, and then you have to say, no, I want that different, instead of collaborating with you. So I think the collaboration aspect is going to be really important. And in terms of raw capabilities of agents, I'm not too sure. So we see a lot of benchmarks, and the models keep getting better and better at those, and a lot of demos or a lot of hype on X about like coding agents, or like 95, I think it's Y Combinator that said that 95% of the code for their startup was written by AI.
Yeah, 95.
And for me, that doesn't really reflect my reality as a developer. I think, and I see companies, when you're working on a complex topic, you can't have AI write 95% of your code. So I think we're not there yet in terms of autonomous agents, for many, many reasons. I think the context one you mentioned is a good explanation. And even with long context, like the agent still makes mistake. It doesn't work with the same, context about the project that you do. So I think we're still, I don't know whether it's month or a year, but like we're still not there.
Yeah. Okay, there's more closing questions. There's two existing options now: AI IDE or plugins in VS Code. So how do you see these two options?
Yeah, so that's a very complex business question,
Yeah.
even for us at CodeGeeX. So interestingly, I think the reason why everyone went with an IDE is because VS Code was so slow to roll out support for for like any AI-enabled feature in VS Code, and they said that they're doing this because they don't want the API to change too much. They want once they commit to an API, which is a reasonable reason. But then they use hidden APIs for their own products like GitHub Copilot. So I think all the people that are competing in the code space realize that VS Code was now Microsoft's territory, and that if you wanted to compete on VS Code, you were mostly going to lose because the integration with GitHub Copilot is getting stronger and stronger every day. And so I think the move to the IDE was also to try some more like experimental features. I'm thinking Cursor like developed this crazy kernel level file system to work on two versions of the code base at a time, so that the agent could modify the code without affecting the version of the code the user is working on. So that's one example, but I think having your own IDE opens up this door. I'm kind of waiting to see what it looks like a year from now. So like so many companies are creating, are like starting to work on AI for coding, and I wonder if we're going to end up in a space with like 100 different IDEs, and I wonder whether that's really sustainable, because when you want to switch between providers, it's going to be I think kind of an issue. So I think the debate's not settled, but it's true that you're very limited when you have only an extension.
Yeah, so there's a talk today of vibe coding workflow, so where AI handles most of the code generation and humans focus more on high-level direction or debugging and reviews. So how much capabilities can AI really bring to the crucial task of code review? Can models effectively catch subtle bugs or architecture issues?
So I think I would trust. So architecture issues, I think bugs and architecture issues, you often see like bugs in the kernel, like Linux kernel being found like decades after, and people like reviewed that code over and over. And I do use AI for debugging. I think it's quite useful sometimes. I would trust. I think it's for sure a clear win if you're able to have like a very thorough reasoning and multi-pass pipeline over your code. On every PR that you do, I would 100% activate it to have like this double check. But I wouldn't place AI at the center of the code review process, because essentially there's bugs that are like you have objectively you have a bug in your system. There's also design, and I think AI it's good at like creating a small structure for your app. But when you get to code bases with like a more complex coding architecture, it definitely it's harder for the AI to perform. So I think it has to be collaboration again between the human and the AI.
Double check is cool.
Yeah, double check is cool for sure.
So how do you comment on vibe coding?
The way the definition of vibe coding, I think I forgot the Kaparthi tweet that started the whole thing. I think it's super cool because essentially what it really means to me is a lot of people who couldn't be able to code before are able to, without all the stress and complexity they used to face with like compiler errors, or stuff that would just stop them right in their tracks, right? So that's super cool to see more people joining in and enjoying coding. I think vibe coding in production or in very complex system is just not feasible, and nobody's doing it. So I think it's a super cool phenomenon in terms of hobby programming. But I wouldn't say I'm a vibe coder fan when it comes to more serious systems.
Yeah, last year or this year earlier, GitHub CEO he has get a TED speech. He is saying everyone will become a developer, not just nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that make me think of the questions, not from the developer insights, from editor insights, because I'm not a real coder. I'm a vibe coder. So when I'm keep doing interview every day, right? So I need to write article and get the audio to the text. So that sometimes I need the tool to transport to different language, like from the Chinese to the SRT file. So then they need some tools to make me to do that things, do that complicated works. So that confused me quite a long time, but I just haven't had the mind in my head to coding the tool. Yeah, and just suddenly I recommend that I recognize that I can just vibe coding a tool to help me to do that things. But if you are the developer or programmer, you can suddenly say, there's a problem, there's issues. I need to coding some tools to help me to solve the problem. But for the normal people, for the common people like me, I'm the editor. I'm not a coder, so it's hard to have the mind of coding in my head. So that let me confused about the GitHub CEOs. He's saying is really need everyone to become developer. So how to have the mind of coding in your head?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the reason why I got so interested in coding and LLMs for code is also the mission behind it is to like grant access to make software accessible to everyone. And I think it's so valuable today in like the digital age. For example, your example is perfect. And I have so many other small issues, software issues that I would just like to ask an agent or,
Yeah.
and I do some of these things as well where I have an annoying task where I don't have the time to spend on it, or maybe I don't really know like the format or the documentation, and I can just task it off to an agent. That's super cool. And yeah, I completely agree with his vision long term to say that everyone's going to become a coder, and I think it's kind of about time because this society is based essentially on technology. And so far, there's only like a very small percentage of the population that has gotten access to this technology. So I think the more people are able to, get their hands on it and contribute, it's going to be very cool.
And the problem is how to make everyone hands-on coding, how to let them try to vibe coding. Because before I try to vibe coding, I just don't have the mind to coding, you know.
Yeah, it's cool that you got into it for sure.
Yeah. So looking ahead, what's to consider the most crucial unsolved challenge or the holy grail for the next generation of code LLM, perhaps related to reasoning, reliability, or true programming understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, the number one problem is context. So there are two parts of this. The one part you mentioned, which is how to like once you have the context, how to feed it to the model in a way that doesn't like result in exploding costs and or loss in performance. And the other thing is gaining that context. There's a recent project by Devin. Oh, sorry, or by Cognition Labs. Yeah, that I really enjoyed trying out. It's their Deep Wiki website and feature, and I think it's a very good step towards starting to build knowledge bases for code for AI. So far, we've kind of relied on what's stored in the parameters of the model to let the model be able to code, and we've also relied on like a RAG and other like retrieval pipelines, but they are not really based on very like technical, well-written documentation, and everything is automated. So I think it's a very promising direction. So yeah, context for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, deving is cool. So, how crucial will capabilities like continued learning or lifelong learning be for code LLMs to effective adapt to the ever evolving landscape?
Yeah, for sure. I think with all the new frameworks popping up, new libraries or new languages, you're going to have some part of that. To be fair, I have no idea whether it's going to take the form of, a new model release every 6 months that's up to date, or I think we're going to get closer to like, closer and closer releases between models, or if it's going to be some new paradigm and how to like inject knowledge into LMs. But I don't think the task of like updating language models, facts is solved at all. If you have like a llama from 2 years ago and you're trying to teach it about what happened in the past 2 years, you're going to have a real issue doing that. You would much rather do the whole pre-training or post-training again. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can you share your next goal in Zhipu AI you're going to do?
Yeah, so my next goal is the current project I'm working on. So hopefully in June or July, we'll see a technical report. We'd like to develop this model based on diffusion or any of the improvements we can find to drive down the latency for tasks that require this like very high throughput for coding, and hopefully make it open. So that's the next goal, is to develop efficient architectures for code.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the ChatGPT just have the long-term memory issues just a couple of weeks ago, right? So
Yeah.
can the long-term memories help the code LLM for remember the libraries, APIs, or project-specific contexts?
Yeah, that's very interesting. So actually, I don't know how they implemented this feature. It
Yeah,
depends.
that's still a question.
Yeah,
Nobody
yeah.
knows how they solve it. Yeah.
And for me, it really depends on the implementation. So if it's like Devin, where the AI takes notes during the conversation and they just removed the little memory created notification, or if they do RAG over past conversation over embeddings, I'm not too sure how, like, whether it will scale. Like, it's not that I'm not confident, just don't know. And but I think there are like quite a few interesting avenues in this space on how to handle this memory. I think there was a paper that I have to read absolutely when I get home, is Mem0 by I forgot the name of the lab. But yeah, I think they're working heavily on memory for models, because it's really cool if it works, for sure.
So finally, could you please share some advice for our developer friends watching? So whether they are students aspiring to enter LLM research or experienced engineers like looking to effective leverage AI-assisted programming in their daily work. So what skills, mindsets, or areas of focus do you believe are especially important today?
I think so. I'm quite young. I don't know if I'll give the best advice, but this is my my interpretation of the current stage we're at. I think it's super important to focus on hard problems. I think the speed at which it's going, we're not, as I was saying, we're not there yet. Like, it's not autonomous, but you're going to have a lot of tasks, such as like easy front-end development work, or easy. I mean, front-end development can be really hard, but like the easier parts of it, or easier parts of back-end, or a lot of other fields are going to be eaten up by these models, or at least people will be less willing to hire and to pay for that. And I think it's important to pick up hard problems. I think we've cited a few, and it's really important not to underestimate how much you can learn. I was so stressed before going to Tsinghua because I had never did AI before, and it was a combination of working hard and really like having conversations with ChatGPT, like, how can you explain me this over and over, or reading papers every day, and also a lot of very nice people lending you a hand. So yeah, don't underestimate yourself, and focus on hard problems, I would say, is my advice.
Yeah, let me recognize an interesting question about what major you suggested to study in the future. Because I just heard Jeffrey Hinton have an interview saying about he suggested students to learn math and CS.
So I'm not sure like what major makes most sense today. I think math is incredibly useful, but because I don't have a math background at all, I studied literature in high school, and then I did programming school without math. So that's why part of the reason why I was very stressed to start at Tsinghua, and I had picked up a few things. But I think math.
So self-learning and later?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks to enormously thanks to like ChatGPT and such, and I think but it's true that when I meet people who have a math background, they have or just engineering in general, they have like a much better structure when approaching problems. Or so I think like in France, for example, we have engineering school or école préparatoire, which is like a very intense 2-year math intensive or physics intensive course. So I think those technical fields are going to be very important. Even if you don't end up using the knowledge afterwards, I think it kind of shapes your problem solving skills.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Diego, for this incredible, insightful, and comprehensive discussion covering everything from your personal journey to frontiers of code generation research and the future of AI codings. So it was fantastic having you on the Open AGI Forum. We're really looking forward to your talk, going beyond tokens for code large language models. So this afternoon, and wish you all the best for it. So for our audience attending GoSim, be sure not to miss it. So where can people follow your work or learn more about Zhipu AI's advancements?
So you can follow us on Hugging Face. I think that's where you're most likely to find our models. You can also follow us on X. So you can also check out our latest website where you can use our models for free. It's z.ai, so it's very short. You can check it out now, and we have Z1 and our other deep research models to try out. So definitely go check it out there.
How about personal sharing?
And my personal sharing, you can follow me on X. So my handle is DHBROGJAS. So hopefully you can find me, or I'll give you the link so you can put it on the video.
Okay. So thank you once again, Diego. And thanks to everyone watching the Open AGI Forum, hosted by GoSim. Don't forget to follow GoSim Foundation on X and YouTube for more exciting content. See you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.